Good to see everybody this evening. So, it's May. It's warming up. I think it's warming up. I think it's going to warm up and then it doesn't. And then we freeze and then it's been a crazy spring. And for beekeepers, people don't realize how much crazier it is for us. And but it's great to see everybody. We have several who are new with us tonight. We want to welcome you. It's great to have you here with us. My name is Steve. I'm the president of the Benton County Beekeepers here, and we are excited to have you here with us. And any questions, anything that we may be able to do to try to help you in any way, let us know, and we'll do all that we can. We have a special guest speaker with us this evening, Jacob Bates. You've probably heard the name thrown around. Jacob is the new state inspector for the north half of the state, and so I don't envy him really when it comes to that, because I know the traveling he's going to be doing, what's that?
I'm pretty sure the last 2 weeks, the first two I started, I drove over 3,000 miles in 2 weeks.
Wow, 3,000 miles in 2 weeks. Well, when you're covering border to border, basically north of I-40, right, is what you're covering. So he's got a lot, and catching up a little bit with some guys over the last couple of months that were waiting. I know there were several that were waiting for things for an inspector to come by, and busy time of the year for the inspectors to go through with all the nuke sales and everything else. So, but we're excited to have you here with us, Jacob. When we saw that he was getting started, I guess it was the middle of last month when he first got started, we immediately thought we've got to get him out here, because we want there to be a relationship you build with Jacob, and that way there are a lot fewer issues, and communication is good and everything else. Then we'll solve a lot of issues that are unnecessary, hopefully down the road. And so we definitely want to make sure that we have that good relationship and communication and everything with the state. So just a couple of things real quick before I turn the microphone over to Mr. Bates here. Oh, I'm connected to yours. I'm not connected to mine. Just some things coming up here in next. Might not even work. You just here in the next month or two, we have next month's meeting is going to be. I practiced it last month, and I'm not going to get it right. John, somebody say it. John Z, that's what he goes by. I practiced it last month and I nailed it. Yeah, so coming to us, teaches within the apiary area, U of A, and is a longtime beekeeper, a lot of experience. He's going to be sharing with us honey harvest, honey marketing your honey, and some of that along for next month. And again, we're trying in our monthly meetings to stay a little bit ahead of what you need to be doing. Tonight is pest management. If you're not doing pest management yet this year, you're behind. But we try to stay a little bit ahead of what's going on, so that you have, especially for our new beekeepers, that you have a little bit of information going into what we're doing. We have a field day on June 26th. That will probably be here again in my bee yard, just up here on the hill behind the building. And we'll be doing some hands-on pest management. We're talking about, I asked Jacob when he came, since this was our topic for tonight, based on what he sees and the things that he's learning, the things that he is experiencing as he's traveling around, some things that he would recommend, and along that line as well. And so, but we're going to be doing a little more hands-on treatment type of things for new beekeepers. probably be doing some alcohol washes or some powdered sugar rolls, some different techniques for testing for mites and just some different things so that you can get your hands on a little bit of the techniques that you're going to need down the road. And then also, we're going to practice queen marking. I don't have that many queens, but hopefully still by the end of June, I'll still have a lot of drones. And so I just did a drone marking class with my class I'm teaching, ages 7 through 18, 19-year-olds. And so I've got one hive up here that is just chock full of marked drones right now. But it was a great thing to watch those kids handling drones and being able to manage that and do it in a way that I think they would feel comfortable enough handling a queen. And so I'm not going to let them touch my queens, but I think they could. So be around for that. And our field day, I know this is online, and if you're watching this or if you're here tonight and you're not a member of the club, the field days are for members only. They're free for members. And so if you want to be a part of the field days and several other activities and things that we have going on, that will require membership to the club to be able to be involved with that. And then in July 1st will be our other meeting, first Thursday in July. We also have an opportunity coming up in September, end of August, 1st of September. Let me see if I pulled it up here. I don't have it up right now. The Ozark Homesteader Expo. I believe it's going to be at the fair, during the fair. They've bumped the fair back a little bit later, and at the Benton County Fairgrounds, and they have asked us to come and set up a booth, and if we would do a lecture on beginner beekeeping, and if we would also do some kind of a demonstration. So I think we're going to do a honey extraction demonstration at that as well. And so if you want to be a part of that, we will need people to be at the booth throughout those few days, 3 or 4 days that the booth will be set up there. So we'll be putting information out, probably put out some kind of a sign-up list online for you to volunteer to be a part of that as well.
The end of September, 1st of October. September 28th through October 2nd. September
28th, so it's the end of September,
Yeah.
1st of October. September 28th through October 2nd. So look forward to that. But I think that's all I've got at the moment. I'm going to switch this over. I'm going to turn this over to, yes?
Roy,
Hey.
would like to say something.
Yeah, Roy?
Hey, I'm just off a Zoom call with the Arkansas Beekeepers Association.
Deborah, get the mic.
Come up here and get on camera.
Hi, guys.
Hey, I'm Roy Duncan. I'm the Northwest Arkansas Regional Director for the Arkansas Beekeepers Association. I'm sorry I'm late. I just got off a Zoom call with the rest of the state regional directors and the president, and we've set the date for the Arkansas, the whole statewide get-together. The fall meeting is going to be September the 24th and 25th. That's a Friday and Saturday in September. Okay, so if you want to put down on your calendars, save the date. It's going to be in Mountain View, Arkansas, at the Ozark Folk Center. Okay, you can call over there and get a cabin and get a room somewhere for Friday night, and then we'll have Saturday, and then we'll usually break up Saturday afternoons sometime where you can get home. But just let you know, we're working on speakers, we're working on getting vendors from all over to come in. We do have some limited space, so if anybody would like more information, talk to me. I've got notes that are pretty jumbled up, but we have a new Northwest Arkansas bee inspector. And where did I put his name? Oh, I wrote it on another piece of paper. You're in. in Charleston, okay? All right, that's great. Anyway, your name is on the list.
Yeah.
We're going to update
Put it in my
the,
account.
there you go. We're gonna update the ABA website. John Zbyszlak, who's the head guy at the U of A for bees, and I've forgotten his title. But anyway, just so you guys know, I'm excited to be here. I'm sorry I'm late, but we just got off the meeting, and I want to let you guys know you're the first ones in the state that know, okay? So, thank you.
And he said John Z's name, so I didn't have to. And so, yeah, John Z will be with us next month here at our monthly meeting, and so be here for that as well. All right, I'm gonna turn it over. I think this is all ready to go. So I'll let Jacob introduce himself because you know as much about him as I do at this point. So good to have you with us.
Thank you. Well, my name is Jacob Bates. I'm about 37 years old, be 38 this year, but I just started 2 weeks ago for the state of Arkansas, the apiary inspector for the North Half, as he said, and I look forward to serving everybody, and I've already did a lot of inspections, and there's still a lot of bees to be inspected this year, so just be patient with us. I'll get to you as soon as we can, but I'm glad for all y'all to have me up here tonight, and we'll talk a little bit about pest management, and for new beekeepers, we'll talk about registering your apiaries and getting set up for an inspection. I guess that dog had to run in with some bees. Is it gonna click?
We call those jalapeno sky raisins.
That's right, jalapeno. There's my contact info if anybody wants to write that down. That's my work phone number. It's the best way to get hold of me is through that phone number. You can text me or call me. Usually if you call me and I'm on the road somewhere, I'll say, well, send me a text so I'll be sure and not forget, because you know how that goes. You can email too. Everybody got it? Good? Okay. Oh, it went backwards. All right. That's the state website we'll have the next slide on it, where you go to register your, of course, that'll take you to the main website, agriculture. This is a little bit outdated. It don't look like that no more, but they've updated the website. But if you do go to the website, it will say you go to plant industries, and apiaries underneath plant industries. And as you see down here, it still kind of looks similar to that. Bee yard registration form, that's the first one. And apiary information packet, it kind of helps new beekeepers as well. It's got a lot of information in it. And down below, next to the bottom, that's the apiary rules and regulations. That's where you go to read here's some of it right here. That's the rules we go by. And this is the registration form, so if you're a new beekeeper and you haven't got your bees yet, or if you've gotten them, be sure and go and fill it out and mail it in. You can also scan and email it. The new one's got a submit button, but it doesn't work. I might have to ask them about that. It won't work for me either. But this is basically the apiary registration rules. And he's got some back there again. If anybody needs any on the way out, he's got some registration forms. And this came up here recently. Someone was asking if the state will notify them if someone puts bees around their area. We only do that is if the person doesn't own the land, like a commercial guy comes in. We'll ask the beekeepers around the area. They'll send a letter from the plant board down there to get your permission. But if they own the land, no permission is required. They can place them on their land. And you're supposed to display your number, or at least your name, around the apiary, so we know it's registered, but we still can look it up with GPS. And inspections, you only have to have an inspection if you are going to move them. or sell them. If you're just selling honey, a lady called me the other day, she wanted an inspection, she's gonna sell honey. I said, well, you don't have to have one to sell honey, just if you move the bees. But we also do inspections to help new beekeepers as well. We'll do some outreach there. And you can't sell, donate, give away, etc., without being inspected. We kind of covered that before, and then you get a health certificate as long as they pass. There's no bird diseases found. And it's free. Taxpayer funded, but it's free to the beekeepers, so that's a good thing. Because I have poultry and the MPIP, it's not free. We still have to pay for it. And there's all of our emails and the office, Little Rock office contact number. And we'll go back to winter of 2021. This was already on this slide, so I'm sure a lot of people seen some dead outs this year. There's an example there. If you do have dead outs and you haven't done something with them, the wax moths have probably already moved in, but if you catch it early enough, you can freeze those frames and that'll keep all that from, and then you just put it in, you know, a couple months ago whenever the bees were, if you did have any alive, you could let them clean it out. Yeah, people ask, is honey still good to eat? Yeah, it's still good to eat. It's honey, it don't go bad. But you can keep it for your, and if you had catbird, then you can either scrape it out or a strong colony will clean it out in the springtime.
Can you go back real quick? That, one more. On that honey on the dead out, it said it might not taste good?
Well, it was because it was fall honey, and its main fall flow around here is goldenrod. And goldenrod, some people like it, but some people don't. It's very, very strong honey. And if you fed sugar, then it's not really honey. You know, a lot of people feed sugar in the fall, sugar water or something to help them build up. So you'd know. And that's the dead out on the bottom board. You just scrape all that off. Poor bees. All right, here's some pests of, I haven't really seen any wax moths yet, but I'm sure they're starting to come around. Normally you find them in the middle of hot summer if you go out there right at dusk, and if you have a telescoping cover, lift off that cover and or on the inner cover right there, they'll be sitting there waiting to go into the hive. And that's also if you had dead outs and you didn't put it on paramoth or something or freeze it, then the wax moths will sure move in. Or you could just put it in a colony. If you had some survive, you could just stack it, another box right on top of them. But if you don't, that's what it's going to look like, and then you know what that mess is. Yeah, we don't want to be a wax moth farmers, do we? Small hive beetles, they're starting to really come around. I've seen quite a few of those in different colonies over the past 2 weeks. One was a nuke that, I guess it was just weak or something, but they had a pretty good number of small hive beetle larvae already in them. So, and I actually had one at my house, one of my nukes. I pulled out that frame and there they were. So there was only about 4 or 5 cells of catbird left on that frame. So I shook all the bees off and in the freezer it went. So I took care of that problem before it got to that point of being slimed. Varroa mites, that's another, they're around all the time. They won't ever go away, unfortunately. There's different ways you can treat for Varroa. You know, there's different, but the way to find it, you got to do to sample them. You can do the alcohol wash, sugar shake, or the sticky boards, which you talked about y'all been doing y'all's field day, so y'all get a hands-on of that. But that just tells you your threshold using these methods. There's the life cycle of the mite. Queen lays the egg, and they start moving in right when they're capped, that's when the mites really reproduce, and that's the stage we're at. We've had several rounds of broods already this spring, and I've noticed I saw one mite on an adult drone, but I've been checking my drone brood, and that's another way you can check for mites. You know, if you have a double deep colony or 2 boxes and you break that apart, check your drone larvae. If you see a lot of mites in your drone larvae, you've probably got a mite problem, but most all colonies right now have mite problems. And the EPA and the USDA just approved oxalic acid vapor with honey supers present as it's approved mite treatment now. That's the only one that I know that's approved with honey supers on. Most of the other ones you can't use with the honey flow, and some of them you definitely don't want to use thymol on. You'd have some bad tasting honey. European foulbrood, I haven't seen any yet this year, but I know a lot of people's had problems with it in the past. It is a reportable disease. It's not the end of the world like American foulbrood is. But to treat it, you have to get the medication, which is terramycin, and now, I think in 2017, you have to have a veterinary feed directive to get the medication. Man Lake sells it. I think that's where a lot of people get it from, but you have to get a veterinary, and I have contact for a vet, so I'm gonna show you in the next couple slides what to look for, because we can get it taken care of, especially if you catch it early. And it usually clears up pretty good. Now if you see that white larvae right there around the center of the frame, that one's pretty normal looking larvae. You see this one that's twisted and brown? That one's a definite, and see the spotty brood pattern? That's a telltale sign of EFB, especially when you start seeing the twisted larvae. They're not white and shiny as they should be. And see, here's another picture. You see how they're turning brown and kind of falling to the bottom of the cell? And see, notice the eggs in the middle of the cell where she has laid back because they pulled the dead larvae out. But what it is, it's a bacteria, and it's in the nurse bee's gut. And what it does, the bacteria competes with the larvae for food, and it outcompetes them and they die. That's where the terramycin comes in. There is other treatments for it. You can requeen, that seems to help, or you can do a shook swarm method where you take them and just shake them off all in the new foundation, let them start over. It basically breaks the brood cycle, helps them clean out. But there's some close-ups of some EFB. There's another picture there. So if you see that in your hives, you know, let us know because we can get it taken care of. And on the small hive beetles, the best prevention is put them in the sun. Keep your hives in full sun, because if they're in the shade, that's not a good thing. That's where the hive beetles love it. You can use, there's just several different traps on the market that work. Swiffer sheets, the unscented Swiffer sheets, they're cheap and they work really good too. Put them in between the boxes and on top and on the bottom board. And I guess that's it. Anybody got any questions?
I did have a question about selling honey.
Yeah.
When, I thought I read on the website that you can't sell honey retail unless you have been inspected by the state.
That's probably under the food side of it, because the apiary section, we don't regulate honey. I know they do, like the health department.
Right.
I think that's because, yes, that is true on that, because they have to come inspect your equipment. It's just like you're a restaurant, basically, if you're gonna sell it retail. But now you can sell it under the, what's it called?
Cottage law.
Yeah,
Under what?
The Arkansas cottage law.
the cottage law.
Less than 500 pounds.
I don't remember.
Something like that.
I don't know if there's a limit on it or not, but it is under the cottage law. You can sell it from your house or, roadside stands or farmers markets, that thing. But yeah, to sell it retail, I think you gotta be inspected by the health department.
And maybe this is a question for them. Can you sell it on consignment? So like I had somebody ask me, an actual homeopathic doctor asked me to sell my honey in a store. Then I put it in there and sell it on consignment.
Yeah, I think that's another question for them. You'd have to look at those, but, because I think I've read something about that, and if you do all that, yeah, you've got to be inspected.
Okay.
There's other things to go through. But yeah, as far as the apiary department, we don't handle honey sales. We're just making sure the honeybees are healthy for pollination in Arkansas. Anybody else have any questions?
If you're buying, equipment from another state that has wax and stuff in it already, and you bring it to Arkansas, do you have to get that inspected before or after, or at all?
Not the equipment. Now, if it had brood in it, then, then it'd be different, but I don't.
Brood, yes, but not the wax?
Yeah, there's no laws, otherwise, Man Lake sells wax to everybody, of course, it's been rendered, but,
Well, I mean, like the comb.
yeah.
It's somebody
As long as
else's-
there's no brood in it, then it's,
Okay.
I would kind of be cautious of it personally, Because usually if most states, if there's AFB, they have to be burned immediately, but, EFB can still kind of live in the wax and stuff, but it doesn't leave spores like American foul brood does. But yeah.
What do you have to do as far as, starting an apiary here, like, one from Missouri? So if he was to bring things from Missouri, what do we have to do as far as getting them inspected?
You need them to inspected by the state of Missouri, do they do it? Let me, if you can, give me a call tomorrow, because I'll be in Little Rock and I'll ask my boss, but usually they'd have to be some form of health certificate to bring them into the state, and then we'll have to inspect them again
Well, we
too.
thought about just buying these here.
Yeah, that'd be the best way.
Just to make it easier.
Yeah, that'd be the best way.
Okay.
That way, they're inspected. Yeah, so some states don't regulate them like Arkansas does. Any other questions? I guess I'll turn it back over.
Sure appreciate it, Jacob. I got in touch with Jacob just immediately. I think it was the day you posted on Facebook that he got the job, and he wasn't actually actively involved with the work yet for another couple of weeks, and so we're fortunate for because I kind of figured you'd start getting some of those calls from different clubs and things to come out, and I thought I'm going to jump on that as quick as I can. But if you ever have any questions at all, anything, and we will be the first ones. If we don't know how to answer a question, Jacob in the state office, that's where we're going to turn. And we're not just going to make up an answer just to satisfy you, as we want to make sure that we get it right. So I'm going to, let me close this out and start it back up, see if it works. Last June, we tried a Zoom meeting. Anybody a part of that Zoom meeting last June when we did? Well, good. Then you haven't heard this. So a lot of this, I won't spend a whole lot of time on it because a lot of the things that Jacob just dealt with concerning different pests and different things, we have several that we deal with, as you just saw pictures directly from the hive of many of those problem issues. And that's the thing, this is just part of the job. There's no way around it. We can do all we can to prevent it. And even when you're doing everything you think you can to prevent it, you're still going to have to deal with it. Some of them more than others, like Varroa. There's not a hive in the United States that doesn't have Varroa mites in it. I think Australia is the only country, or is the only continent on the planet, I guess maybe Antarctica, that doesn't have Varroa. And they are keeping that protected in Australia. They do not let anything in or out of that country because of the problems. So there's your close-up that's the friendly little Varroa mite that you're dealing with. And so when you see them close up, it makes it even easier to kill them off when they look like that. Tracheal mites are another issue sometimes we deal with as well. Small hive beetles, wax moths, ants, roaches, mice, all kinds of different types of issues that we deal with in our hives. And so for every single one of those things, there are solutions. At least there's something that you can do to try to control it. And for those, as I said, we have several that are here that are brand new beekeepers. And when you start seeing a lot of these issues, it can kind of get a little overwhelming. Go back 50 years, beekeeping was a different animal 50 years ago. Varroa mites weren't in the United States 50 years ago. Neither were small hive beetles. And I'm sure there are several other things that have been introduced over the last several decades. But back in the day, it was have some beehives and just let them produce and make sure that they're fed and ready for the winter, and that's about it. There wasn't a lot of maintenance in the same way that it is today, and this has a lot to do with why honeybee populations have suffered over the last several decades because of a lot of the problems that the honeybees are dealing with. Because it's not just the ones in our hives, it's the ones out in those trees and everywhere else too. So even the feral, the wild bees that are out there, they're dealing with, every one of them have Varroa mites in their trees as well. And so they struggle with the same things. The honeybees in our apiaries, they have the benefit that they have a beekeeper that's watching over them, that is helping them to manage the things that they've been struggling with for many, many years. And so that's why we do what we do. If you're not familiar with the Honeybee Health Coalition, I recommend that you check out their website. They have a lot of helpful tools for dealing with different types of pests. They do focus a lot on Varroa, and for, as we've talked about, reasons that are obvious, because it's one of our biggest problems. It's the honeybeehealthcoalition.org. They have a Varroa management guide, and I should have I printed one out and have a copy of it. I refer to a lot. They basically go through and evaluate all of the different types of treatments that are available, whether you like more natural treatments that are essential oil-based, if you prefer acid-based treatments, or other chemical-based treatments, whatever is your preference. They deal with all of them, and they don't recommend one over the other, but they do give all the statistics and information on how to use each one. I believe I don't know if I have they've got all kinds of videos on the website as well that show how to test for Varroa, and then I think they have a video for almost every single treatment of showing you how to do the treatment. And so they're very, very great resource. Let's see, it's been a while since I've gone through this slideshow. We talk about Varroa mites a lot of times in that sense. Imagine if you were walking around with a cantaloupe hanging on your back, or on your chest, usually, because they're usually on the underside of the honeybee, and so that's what our honeybees are dealing with, and there's kind of the history of it. Originally a pest of the Asian honeybee, introduced into the United States, we believe about 1987, in all beekeeping countries, as I said, except Australia, and it's a parasite on both the larva and the adult bee, and it is a vector. It is the source of and brings in a lot of other diseases. You see deformed wing disease, virus on bees, and many other things that it's because of the Varroa that have brought that in and are causing a lot of those problems for your bees. There you see deformed wing virus, some different examples of it. And so if you open up your hives in the spring after coming through the winter and the bees in your hive are looking something like this, you've got some issues. And so every honeybee colony in the continental United States and Canada either has Varroa mites today or will have them within several months. That is true. And you can go through. This is all on their website. This is a PowerPoint presentation that they actually provide for clubs and others to use to help get the word out. And so I copied a lot of their slides to go through this. One of the things that's really cool, something that I have spent a lot of time learning about over the last couple of years, is this idea of Varroa being a ghost in the hive. And what that means is one of the reasons why the bees have such a hard time managing Varroa is because the Varroa are able to duplicate the pheromone of the honeybee. And studies that have been done by Cornell University and University of Florida and University of Nebraska, they have spent a lot of time looking at Varroa. And if you have something that big hanging on you, you would think, because the bees they do a great job of being cleaning the hive, cleaning each other. So why would they not get rid of that big parasite that's hanging there on the outside of one of their sisters? And the reason is because the Varroa mite has this ability, and they've learned, and as they've studied it, that whenever they land on a substance that has some kind of a chemical, like pheromone, or if it has some kind of a signature, chemical signature, a Varroa has the ability to be able to duplicate that. So your bees, you just treated for bees, you got your Varroa under control. Maybe there's not even hardly any, you didn't see any in your test. It looks like your hive is pretty clean. Well, your bees are out foraging, they're out, maybe you don't open feed, but your neighbor down the road does, and your bees are over on an open feeder with them. Varroa will move from one of those bees over to, you can find videos online of watching Varroa jump over to another bee. It's very quick, but it happens. And now bring it back into your hive. While in transport, that Varroa is beginning to create a chemical signature that matches that forager. Now, foragers have a different pheromone than a nurse bee. Nurse bees have a different pheromone than obviously a queen bee. It's all a little bit different. But once the Varroa gets back into the hive, what they see them doing a lot of times is they're jumping from the forager over to one of the nurse bees. As soon as they do, it takes a few minutes, so that's the most dangerous time for the Varroa at that point, but it takes a few minutes for that Varroa to now duplicate the pheromone of the nurse bee. It's a little bit different. But as soon as they have duplicated that pheromone signature, they're invisible. The honeybees don't notice them. They are, obviously, it's dark in the hive, and the bees, it's not what they see in the hive, it's what they are really detecting through the pheromones. That's the greatest way for them to detect things. And so that Varroa has now made itself smell just like the nurse bee. Then, that Varroa, where are the nurse bees going? Why would it jump to a nurse bee? Because the nurse bees are going to feed the larva. And that's where the Varroa wants to ultimately end up. And so, as the nurse bees, and drone larva has a different pheromone signature than worker bee larva. So the Varroa mite, they know they want drone drone larva. And the reason for that, they prefer it, is what reason? The length of time. You got a worker bee, gestation period is how long? 21 days. Drone bee is how long? 24 days. So they have 3 extra whole days to be able to multiply and feed on that larva, and so they prefer the drone larva. They'll take a worker larva, but they prefer the drone. And so the thing is, though, when they get into that cell with the larva, they get themselves on that larva. Guess what that Varroa mite's doing? It's reduplicating the same pheromone signature as the larva now, and they don't. The honeybees, they're blind to it, and so they're able to duplicate and procreate in the cell, and so I've been doing. When I first started hearing about this, that's when I started doing a lot more research and looking into it, because this is cool stuff to me. Even though I hate Varroa, that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do, and but that's the reason why they cause so much trouble. Now, there are some lines of bees that are now being bred that are able to detect the Varroa in cells, although they don't believe necessarily that they're detecting the Varroa as much as they are detecting the larvae who are in distress. And so when the nurse bees and other workers detect the larva in distress, they'll pull the caps, and then they'll clean those out and pull the larva out, drag it out that has the Varroa on it, and get it out of the hive. And so there are some lines of bees that are proving and showing that they are able to manage Varroa better than others, but still not perfectly. So that's kind of it has changed my perspective on how I deal with Varroa. Because when I understand more about what the pest itself is doing, that also helps me in my treatment and management of the pest. And whereas before I thought, well, I'm going to do the minimum of what I have to do to manage Varroa, now I am at a point of, no, we destroy Varroa. You do what you have to do to get rid of the Varroa. They're not fighting fair. And so we're not going to fight fair either. We have to manage it as best we can. I would say probably the large percent of hives that are lost over the winter, Varroa have something to do with most of them. And that was because they weren't managed well going into winter well enough, or early spring. It wasn't detected and managed soon enough. But Varroa has a lot to do. You go into a hive, and all of a sudden, all your bees are gone. And when you come get through the winter into the spring, open up the hive, and it's not a dead out; they're gone. There's a good chance that Varroa had something to play with over infestation. That those bees decided, we can't stay here. This is not a safe place to be, and they were going to try to eliminate that problem by leaving the hive. And so there's just a lot of issues that come up because of all that trouble that they bring. I'm going to kind of, I've got a little bit of time. When we talk about successful Varroa control, you have to be proactive. You can't just, well, I'm going to treat a couple times a year and just kind of manage it willy-nilly. You have to be aware of what's going on and making sure that you have a good understanding of what's happening inside. I'm not going to go through all the life cycle of the mites. What percentage of mite infestation is considered potentially harmful? What do you know? If you have so many percent of mites per 100 bees, what is harmful? You know? Well, it depends on the time of year. Your percentage doesn't change much at all, but what we're being told now is that if it's in a time of dormancy, but there is a little bit of brood, or dormant without brood, and you see really 2 to 3%. If you have 2%, if you have 2 mites per 100 bees, when we do a mite test, we're testing about 300 bees. And so if you have 6 mites that show up in that test, you've got to treat. You've got to do something to get those under control because you are at a 2% level. And it does go up at certain peak populations and things. If it's at under 3%, if you're at 2%, they say you're okay. Not in my house. If you're at 2%, something's got to be done, because I don't want it to get to 3%, because then it will be at 6% and 12% and 25%, and it can explode on you fast. So that's what we say in our next field day. We're going to be doing how do we test for those. So new beekeepers, you're going to be able to see the different ways that we do that. What's a sampling? Why is sampling important for control? It has to do with what we call your IPM. It's your integrated pest management program that you have for your hives. And it's putting together a plan. This is what we're talking about, being proactive. It's putting together a plan for what you're going to do, what you're planning on doing. I use primarily a couple of different miticides. I use formic acid in one way or another. The Mitaway Quick Strips is one that I prefer. And then I also use Hop Guard. Both of those are actually able to use if I have honey supers on. And so it's not one that's going to leave any residue or anything that's damaging to the wax or the honey. That's why I like those. But if you just use one type of treatment, what is the danger? If all I do, I love the Mitaway Quick Strips. They work great. But if that's all I use, what problem am I probably going to run into? What's that? They build up a tolerance. There's a resistance that they build up to it. Because you never kill all of them. So the ones that didn't die have some kind of a resistance to it. Now they're going to multiply and pass on their genes that had some resistance to it, and that's just going to continue to build and build until now that treatment that you have. Anybody ever used to get penicillin shots? We know how that process works. Every time I got strep throat or tonsillitis, Mom would take me down, I'd get a penicillin shot, and the next day I was back up and running around like a normal kid. And it doesn't work that way anymore because of resistance. And so same thing with our Varroa. And so you have to manage your treatments by alternating and changing some of the methods that you're using so that they don't. And that's why usually in the spring, I'm using my Hop Guard, and it's developed from hops and an acid that comes from hops. And then I'm using my Mitaway Quick Strips, which is formic acid. I'm using that in the fall usually. And then I'm watching throughout the year and seeing if I need to do anything else throughout the year. There's a lot of other things, doing drone brood, like Jacob was talking about, checking your drone brood, but you also might drop a frame or two of drone foundation into a hive. And once you have drone brood full, if you've got chickens love them. Take that drone brood out, take those frames out, put them in your chicken coop, and they will love you forever. And because they will eat your drone brood, but they will also eat all those Varroa mites that are on that drone brood. But those are just management techniques. It's not a treatment. And so it takes more than one thing to try to manage those. Yes?
With the oxalic acid, they found that doesn't happen, that you can use that
I don't know that I've heard anybody say that oxalic acid does not create resistance. I don't know of anything. You know, if I wouldn't.
They all recommend changing
Yeah.
ever so many streets.
I wouldn't stay with just one thing, because if you do get a resistance to it, then you're in trouble. And so, but that's something to ask and research to see what.
I do have an article on that.
Okay.
I'll look and see it.
Yeah, and if you've got that, bring it to me. I'd love to see it.
I've seen that also.
Have you?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe there's something with oxalic that.
Yeah, they said that's the only thing that they don't feel that are tolerance
Hmm.
to. That gets them every time.
Well, if that's the
And it
case,
has for hundreds of years or something.
well, if that's the case, then that's a good thing. But then again, there's a lot of people who don't like to use oxalic, and so. And now, even with it being allowed to be used with supers, and we talked about it. I think Sean, you even called the state, didn't you, at one point? And they have approved it, but at the same time, if the label on your oxalic acid, if it still says do not use with honey supers, it is against the law to use that with honey supers. Now, it may be the exact identical stuff that you'll get when they relabel it. But if the label says do not, you cannot use it.
That label is the law.
The label is the law. That's what we were told. The label is the law. And so, and there's a lot of places that they have not relabeled it yet. And if you buy it today, it will still have the label that says do not. And so make sure you read your label, or call whoever you're buying it from to make sure if you're planning on use it with your honey supers on. So. What sampling method does the Honeybee Health Coalition recommend? They show powdered sugar shake. They, however, will recommend an alcohol wash. And a lot of people struggle with this because you're killing the bees. But if we're talking 300 bees, nurse bees, and by sacrificing those 300 nurse bees, you may be saving 60,000 or maybe even hundreds of thousands of bees in your apiary if you detect that there's a problem and you are able to treat in time. And so the sugar shake works, but it is not as effective as an alcohol wash. An alcohol wash, I guarantee you, it kills all the Varroa that are in there, and you're going to find them. And so, yeah, the sugar shake, it works. A lot of people use it, and that might be what you're more comfortable doing, but it's not 100% as accurate. I'm guessing probably when you're going around, you're mostly using alcohol washes to.
Yeah, we someone wants a Varroa detection.
Yeah.
That's the most accurate.
Yeah. And you go to their website again, they will walk you through all of that as well. We're going to be doing that in our field day. While mite densities may vary across colonies, all colonies in the apiary should be treated at the same time with the same chemical or non-chemical technique. So I test all my apiaries, but only one of them really had a really high mite load. They all get treatment, not just that one. And because, what's that?
Because they drift.
That's right. And so when you have an issue in part of your apiary, you've got to make sure that you're knocking the whole thing out of your apiary, not just one hive, because you will get drift from hive to hive. Answer was true. And that's the thing. You can end up with colonies with what we call mite bombs that just send mites all over your apiary. Again, there's all kinds of different methods. Screen bottom boards help to some extent. They can. You put sticky boards underneath them to catch mites as they fall down. You see the drone brood removal, and then there's all kinds of different types of treatments that are available. What control is right for me? This is something that is an amazing tool that the Honeybee Health Coalition has put together, and it's the Varroa Management Decision Tool. It's on their website, and all you do is click Get Started, and it's going to ask you, do you want to use natural or chemical? Do you, it'll go through all the different questions about types of what you prefer. How many hives do you have? What, they're going to go through all kinds of questions, and it's going to bring up at the end, here are your options. For those questions that you answered, here are the options that best fit what you want to do. And so it's a great, great tool to use. Those are the main questions that they ask, I think. But you'll see those if you go to it's at honeybeehealthcoalition.org/Varroa tool. So in summary, Varroa mite is a formidable foe. Virtually all colonies have or will have them. Large percentage of colonies will not survive if the mite population exceeds 3%. High Varroa populations, those mite bombs, often result in virus epidemics. Some resistant stocks are helpful, but temporary fixes are still needed to keep mite populations low. And the coalition, they have a lot of tools to be able to help you out. And so, anyway, there's a lot more different options and ways of trying to help out with mite issues. We talk pest control in general, but usually in beekeeping when we talk pest control, we're talking Varroa mites. There are a lot of other pests. There are a lot of other issues and things. And how to maintain. You've got small hive beetles and traps and different ways to manage them as well. Small hive beetles, as they crawl out of the hive and lay eggs in the soil below your hives, some use the nematodes. We do as a club. We buy a batch order of nematodes for anybody who wants to try, and nematodes in the soil are supposed to help in attacking and taking care of the larvae, small hive beetle larvae, while they're in the soil. I think in the beekeeping class, I mentioned this. Jamie Ellis, who is at the bee lab at the University of Florida, did some major studies on small hive beetles, and there are some people who think, well, I'll just put a concrete slab right underneath my hives, and so the larva can't fall into the soil into the hive. And the problem with that was, in one of the tests that Jamie was doing, Dr. Ellis was doing, one night after working with small hive beetle larvae, somebody left the lids off of where the larvae were. And he is in a building at the university, and he was on the second floor, and he said when he walked into the building and started walking up the stairs, he opened the door and he sees small hive beetle larvae all over the floor. And he knew right away, somebody forgot to put the lid on. And so he started tracking them. And he followed them all the way back out the door, down the steps, out the front door, across the parking lot, and they were going into the soil. And so somebody that thinks that, well, if I just put me a slab of concrete out there so the small hive beetle larvae can't get down in the soil, I don't think that's going to work. And the adult beetles, once they hatch, they don't crawl back up, they fly. And so there are some entrances now that you can use, because of the way that small hive beetles are not able to fly up into certain things. What is it? What's the one called, the red ones? Guardian entrances. Check those out.
I went through some hives, they were loaded with small hive beetle, and they had those.
Did they really? So those don't work.
Nothing is foolproof.
Right.
They'll find a way in your hive.
I've talked to some guys who are using PVC pipe where it's just curved down, so the bees are still able to get in and out, but it's supposed to make it more difficult for small hive beetles to get up inside there. I've always wondered about some of that because what keeps them from landing on the side of the hive and finding their way crawling in anyway?
I've had some of those beetle back in some of my hives, and I couldn't tell the difference.
Right.
Same amount of the ones that didn't.
You put a beetle barn or something like that in there too.
The
To,
trap worked best.
Yeah.
The sheets worked best.
yeah, Swiffer sheets. Take a Swiffer sheet that's laid on top of the frames, and every once in a while a bee gets his leg caught in a Swiffer sheet, but really not very many. But the small hive beetles have barbs on their legs that they get trapped in the Swiffer sheet. So all the honeybees, while they are herding the Varroa mite around, to running them around, they run across those sheets and get stuck. And those do a really good job. And so there's just a lot of different things that you're able to do. People are experimenting with, find out that they work. And so a lot of different things. A lot of pests, a lot of different things we have to deal with. But overall, if you manage it and you just really use just a little common sense in your management program, it's not too difficult for us to be able to handle. And so if you run into a big issue, don't ever hesitate to reach out. Reach out to us. If we have an answer, we'll help out best we can. If we don't, we'll call the state office. We'll call others. We'll call U of A. We'll call wherever we need to call to get answers. We've got beekeepers here in the room who have been keeping bees for many, many years, and a lot longer than I have. So we've got a lot of experience even sitting here in this room. And so never hesitate to reach out if you ever run into any issues. Any other questions, thoughts, or? All right. Well, next month, as said, John Z is going to be with us, and that'll probably be a good place to ask the question about the honey sales, because he's going to be talking about marketing honey, and so that'll probably be a good place to run some of those questions by next month. So, all right. Thanks for coming again, guys. Jake, thank you again for taking the time to come over, and we wish you the best with your work now, and if there's anything we can do to help you out, let us know as well. We appreciate it. All right. Oh, I always forget.